Welcome to Mainland, your local regional television station. I'm Rajat Agarwal, and here's what's happening around your region. The male pedestrian killed on Sunday has been identified. A Trans-Tasman kayaker is in Takaka. The public is advised to get flu immunizations. A dock scientist explains the Battle for Our Birds program. Kaitiritiri lands a spot on the list of top destinations. And a young family gets community help to rise from the ashes. We have gathered new details on a story we've been following recently. The man who was killed in a fatal crash between a vehicle and pedestrian on the Mutir Highway Sunday evening has been identified by the police as 40-year-old Thomas Cockwaser of Redwood Valley. Mr. Cockwaser is a German national who has been living in New Zealand for a number of years. His family is in Germany now, and they have been informed of the death. The crash investigation is ongoing, and police would like to thank those members of the public who have come forward with information relating to this crash and those who have assisted at the scene. The matter has now been referred to the coroner. Trans-Tasman kayaker 44-year-old Scott Donaldson is in Takaka on a mission to retrieve his kayak he spent almost 3 months in while trying to cross the Tasman. He was rescued by a helicopter last Friday, 74 kilometers off the Taranaki coast, after suffering injuries in rough weather on what was the last night of his 83 days at sea since leaving Coffs Harbour in New South Wales for Port Taranaki on April 19th. His aim was the journey across the Tasman to raise awareness for the needs of physical activity in partnership with the New Zealand Asthma Foundation. This was his second attempt to cross the Tasman, and if he did complete this feat, he would become the first to paddle across the Tasman solo in a kayak. Taupo-based helicopter pilot John Funnell, who was the support pilot for Donaldson, had flown Donaldson to Takaka to prepare to retrieve his kayak. They had spotted the small boat by air on Tuesday morning, 20 nautical miles off Farewell Split, at the top of the South Island. However, John Funnell told the media the kayak has since detached from the beacon and drifted away, but they would continue to search by air. Flu-like illnesses are sweeping through the area, and they have prompted health officials to remind the public that free influenza vaccinations are still available until the end of this month. Local hospitals and GPs are seeing an increased number of people coming in with nasty flu-like illnesses. General Physician and Clinical Director of Medical Services, Dr. Bruce King, said a number of patients have been admitted acutely with breathing difficulties from infections presumed to be viral in origin. He said the elderly and those with pre-existing lung conditions are at greater risk of severe disease, with several confirmed cases of H1N1 infection in younger people. Dr. King said there is still time to get free influenza vaccinations for people over 65 years, those with existing medical conditions, and pregnant women. Mapua GP and Clinical Director Primary, Dr. Elizabeth Wood, said that in the past week, half of her workload has been seeing people debilitated by the flu. She said it was particularly distressing seeing whole families affected where parents were so exhausted by their own illness that they were unable to care for their children. The latest influenza immunization is free from a GP or nurse until July 31st for New Zealanders at high risk of complications. Other people can receive the vaccinations at surgeries and pharmacies for a small charge. The Department of Conservation is running a major campaign called Battle for Our Birds. Mainland TV's Carly Danner caught up with dock scientist Graham Elliott about this attack on introduced pests, our native birds, and some aspects of public concern.
So we're here with Graham Elliott, who's the scientist at Department of Conservation. Thank you for speaking with us today. The Department of Conservation is running a campaign called Battle for Our Birds. And where's this campaign being run?
Well, it's happening throughout the South Island at a range of sites, so there's up to about 24 sites. Some of them are definitely going ahead, others are still waiting to see whether they get the tick. So right from Kahurangi National Park right down to Fiordland, when it's all done, there should be about 700,000 hectares of land that the department will be running the Battle for Our Birds on.
And what type of pests are being targeted?
So we're targeting, well, there's a bit of a story behind it. This year's been a beech mast year, so beech forests, which make up most of the South Island forests, only flower every few years. And in some of those flowering and seeding years, they produce huge amounts of seeds over a large chunk of the country, and that's what's happened this time. And so we're going to have a plague of rats, mice and stoats next spring. It's happened before, so we know what's going to happen and we can see it coming. So we're targeting rats, mice and stoats, but of course we'll also be killing one of our old favourite enemies, the possum, because the tools we'll be using will be effective for possums as well. So it's rats and mice, stoats and possums is what we're after.
And what birds are you trying to protect with this campaign?
Well, almost all of them. So nearly all our forest birds are preyed on. Well, no, all our forest birds are preyed on by rats, stoats and possums. So we're trying to protect the whole lot. So of course it's the rarer ones that we're most worried about. So it's things like kiwis, whio, blue ducks, mohua, the little yellowhead in the forest, parakeets, kakas, the whole lot we're looking to protect. And nearly all of those would suffer dramatically if we don't do anything about it.
And what type of pest control will be used with this?
It's mostly going to be 1080 poison applied from the air. In some places we're close to civilization and you can easily do other things, we'll be using poison and bait stations or traps. But for sort of deepest, darkest Kahurangi National Park, we can't run traps in there. It's too big, it's too far. So in those places we're using airily applied 1080. And it's a really good rat and possum poison. And it does a good job of killing stoats because they subsequently eat the rats and mice that are poisoned.
And do you think that, you said that traps were not going to be working for larger areas, so do you believe that poison is better than using traps, even though it's probably more harmful?
Well, I don't know that it is more harmful necessarily because, of course, traps catch. The thing that people worry about with poisons is it killing some non-target animals, like it kills a few birds and things like that, but of course traps do that as well. But the big thing is that with this operation we'll be killing far more predators than would have happened otherwise, and there will, even if we do kill a few birds, there'll be far less birds killed by our poison than is killed by the predators that we're killing. So the problem with the traps is they're very, very expensive to set up and very, very expensive to run. If we were to try and run this operation with traps, we wouldn't be doing 700,000 hectares, we might be doing 100,000 hectares, so we would just be treating a tiny proportion of the country. So the traps just really don't work for us. And the other problem is that when you're focused on rats, which you are a bit this year, rats breed so prolifically they tend to overrun your traps. You have more rats than you've got traps to catch, and so you just can't keep up with them. So for these big rat and mouse years, we really need to be using poisons.
Okay. And can you say for certain that 1080 isn't killing the birds?
No, 1080 will kill a small number of birds, but like I said, the predators that we're killing will kill far more birds than we'll ever kill with our poisons. There are some species that we know for sure it doesn't kill any of at all, so most species it doesn't kill any of at all. There are a few species where a small number of birds get killed, but they do much, much better after the poison drop because you've killed all the predators that would have eaten them, their eggs and their chicks, so you end up with more birds. So everything we've looked up, we end up with more birds by using the 1080 than not.
And as a scientist, can you alleviate public fears for health concerns around 1080 and rural water supplies?
We measure 1080 levels in water supplies, and apart from right beside a poison bait sitting in a puddle, you can't detect 1080 in water supplies with the tools we use. So the levels of 1080 that might end up in the water are minuscule. So I'm quite confident that it's a safe thing to do. And the other risks about like poisoning people, well, you'd have to eat an awful lot of the baits to kill a person. That's just not a sensible option. It's a very effective poison for dogs, so probably our biggest worry is dogs. Keep your dogs out of places where the poison's been dropped. You shouldn't have them there anyway, but make sure you don't for this.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Pleasure.
CNN.com has scoured the planet to find the 100 best beaches for 2014. And one of Nelson's sandy coastlines has come up trumps. CNN asked well-traveled friends, colleagues, and readers, and after examining the evidence, came up with an excellent guide to the best of the best. It ranked Kaitiritiri Beach at number 68 on the list and said this about the destination. With golden sand and the most sunshine hours in New Zealand, Kaitiritiri Beach is at the top of New Zealand's South Island and the gateway to Abel Tasman National Park. CNN.com says highlights of the beach are the penguins, the seals, and dolphins. Last week we reported that young mother of 3 Nicole Wilson lost everything she had in a house fire in her Richmond home, only escaping with her pajamas she was wearing and a blanket after her 5-year-old son had woken her up to warn her of the fire. It was a fire that appears to have started when a wooden fire screen had become too hot It ignited close to the fireplace, causing the fire to swiftly move into other parts of the house. In our update, we have learned that she and her 3 children have now been rehomed by a property manager in a Tahuna Nui house in a community of Richmond, and Nelson have generously come to her aid with Donaldson furniture and household items. Wilson, who was in a state of shock at the time of the fire, has said that her twins have had no problems in adjusting to the change. But her 5-year-old son has been affected and had a panic attack when the wood burner at her mother's house was first lit. A new Facebook page called New Pay It Forward Nelson had organized a donation drive for items, and a Give a Little website page has also been set up for financial donations with a target of $5,000, and it had already reached $4,877 at the time of the site going on air. A friend of Nicole's, Andrew Neru, who set up the Give a Little page, has also been busy with a sausage sizzle to raise funds for the family, and has posted a series of auctions on TradeMe selling goods donated by Nelson businesses under the username For the Wilsons. The grateful mother of 3 said she wanted to thank all the people who had put forward money or goods, especially the members of Pay It Forward, Neru, and her friends and family. If viewers wish to contribute, then you can go to the Give a Little website and search the cause Richmond Fire. Shuffling going around in the world of local sports. First, it was confirmed this week that Nelson-born Mark Bright will be joining the England side in Glasgow for the Commonwealth Games. The former Tasman Makos, who you might remember as number 8, has combined the latter part of his Tasman career with a career in England. It's super exciting about being selected to represent England in the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow, Bright said. It's been a couple of tough months training, but to finally get selected makes it all worthwhile, and I cannot wait to finally get to Glasgow and get started. And an interesting situation could develop during the games. That is if Bright has to line up opposite his fellow countrymen. New Zealand has won the past 4 Commonwealth Games titles, and Bright is fully prepared should the scenario arise. It would be a privilege to play against New Zealand team that is going for 5 championships and just happens to be where I was born and raised, says Bright. But I'm representing England now, so if this game happens, I'll be good to go. England's best performance in the games was a silver medal at Melbourne in 2006. The Sevens competition kicks off at Glasgow's Ibrox Stadium on July 26th and 27th. And lastly, some exciting news for the Tasman Makos. Former All Blacks halfback Jimmy Cowan has signed a 1-year deal with the Tasman Union. The former All Blacks Highlanders and Southland halfback officially signed with the Tasman Makos on July 11th and looks to contribute immediately during the NPC campaign. Cowan comes home after a 2-year stint with the English club Gloucester. In fact, he will be teaming up with some familiar faces. Tasman head coach Kieran Keane was an assistant coach of Cowan's when they were both with the Highlanders, and Cowan was also a teammate with current Tasman assistant coach Leon McDonald when they were with the All Blacks. I'm representing Tasman now, says Cowan. I'll be putting all my energies towards that. Tasman Chief Executive Tony Lewis said that Cowan's signing was all part of the process towards establishing a strong, all-around squad. Jimmy offers not only fantastic playing and leadership credentials, but also the ability to give us all-around strengths in the matchday squad. 20 years ago in 1994, the Nelson School of Music's Centennial Festival was spectacularly launched to celebrate 100 years of the school's history. The Centennial Festival was one of the most extravagant festivals that Nelson had ever seen, and today the school strives to deliver a program of musical excellence and one that will appeal to as broad an audience as possible. Over the years, the Nelson Festival has featured some of the biggest names in New Zealand's musical history, such as Dame Melvina Major, Michael Houston, Tim Finn, and Dave Dobbin. 2014 marks the Winter Musical Festival's 20th year, and although the School of Music's lovely auditorium is currently closed for earthquake strengthening and upgrade, it is able to stage this year's fabulous lineup at an alternate venue. Frances McKinney heads up the Nelson Winter Music Festival team, and Mainland's Carly Danner had the opportunity to speak with her about this year's lineup.
We're here with Frances McElhenney, who is the director of the Nelson Winter Music Festival and also the manager of Nelson School of Music. Thank you for joining us today, Frances.
Thank you.
What is the purpose of Nelson Winter Music Festival and how does it impact the region?
Well, the festival was set up 20 years ago. This is our 20th anniversary to celebrate the centenary of the School of Music. So that's part of the celebration, and of course the school's 120 years old. And certainly impacts. It brings people out in winter, which is a very good thing, and hopefully it brings a bit more energy into the restaurants and bars at night. It's, as everyone knows, winter's a difficult time. You often see tumbleweeds in the main street, so we want to try and stimulate a bit of energy in the city, and also attract people from outside the region.
On your website, you describe it as the one that almost wasn't. What challenges have you faced with this year's festival?
The biggest challenge, of course, is the closing of our building, our purpose-built concert hall all those years ago. So that's been a challenge, but also exciting, because we've had an opportunity to look at be creative and think about where else we can put things. So we've had performances in a container over Light Nelson weekend and our opening weekend. We're working out of St John's, the fabulous church around the corner, and at the Theatre Royal.
And what are some of the concerts we should look out for?
Oh, that's always a hard question, because the thing with festival is that the contents should always be up there at a high level. So, of course, the main one of the main highlights is Dave Dobbyn and Don McGlashan together in concert. So those are two iconic Kiwi musicians, singers, songwriters. So that's brilliant. We've actually put on an additional concert because this first one sold out. So it's, yeah.
And where can the public find more information on the festival, including tickets, times, website?
Well, they can purchase tickets here. We're at Rainey House in Collingwood Street. They can buy, there are some limited door sales for some events, which is round at Old St John's, so they can purchase at door sales or any ticket direct outlet, the Theatre Royal, Eyesight. Yeah.
Easy enough. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
After the break, we'll bring you the latest weather update and some events and happenings coming up from around the region.